I will be making a few comments from the perspective of the, as you said, the most vulnerable countries, the least developed countries, landlocked countries, and small island developing states. Uh, just to give an idea, the LDCs, the least developed countries, there are 48. Two-thirds of them are in Africa, one-third is in Asia, Haiti is in Latin America. We have the landlocked countries, there are 31. Again, almost half of them are in Africa, and other half in Asia and Europe, as well as in the Latin America. And then we have a small island developing states, over 3 dozen, and you can understand that all of them have some commonalities in terms of looking at the fundamental vulnerabilities that they face. Very high level of poverty, huge impact of climate change on them, the capacity constraints, and lack of, again, the access to water, energy, and the food security. I think when you look at the challenges of these countries, you see that it is in combination of all of that, the persistent poverty, high capacity constraint, huge structural challenges they face, it makes it all the more difficult for them to deal with that on their own. In 2014, there are 2 things that are coming up which are very important, as the Vice President of CESL said in the morning. There's a conference coming up at the Small Island Developing States, which is going to take place in Samoa in in September. And there is another conference which is also coming up for the landlocked developing countries that is now going to take place in Austria, Vienna in September. Now, they will be having a lot of discussions on these issues because now they know that climate change is an overarching issue for all these countries. And when you look at all of them, whether we talk about the melting of glaciers in the Himalayas or in the other mountains, and the desertification in many of the countries, the landlocked countries, and the land degradation, and the sea level rise in the small island developing states, you see the connection of the impact of the climate change, a severe impact on all of them. I think, therefore, we have to look at that from the perspectives of these countries if we are talking about really having a global approach to the solution of this global problem. Now, when you look at the overall, the situation of these countries, now the energy access, you have heard in the morning as well from many speakers that it is very, very low. 80% lack access to energy. If you look at the modern fuels, 90%, they lack modern fuels. Hunger is a big challenge. Only 30% of the people, almost 30% of the people are undernourished. And among them, of course, women, children, and the marginalized population are predominant. And look at the lack of infrastructure, connectivity with the markets of the agriculture, and the low productivity, yet high dependence of the people on agriculture. Almost 60% of the people in the LDCs are dependent on agriculture, yet the contribution of agriculture to GDP is almost 20%. You can see a very high level of disguised unemployment there. Now, again, when you look at the climate change impacts, and then, of course, the energy, the water again, only the 40% of the people have access to drinking water in these countries. Only 30% have sanitation. So this all shows that when you look at the issue of water, energy, as well as the climate change impact, you see the severity of the problem in these countries. And access, affordability, and reliability are key words for them. I mean, even if you have an access, if it is not affordable, it will not have a very good impact on the livelihood of the people. Now, therefore, considering the scale and the complexity of the challenges that they face, the most efficient way, perhaps, to deal with their challenges is to move away from the silos approach to an integrated and holistic approach. That is the first thing that we have heard coming from all of them. Secondly, they are saying that all the issues that are relevant to them, whether it is the oceans for the SIDS, or whether it is a desertification for the landlocked countries and the mountainous region, or the vulnerability economic as well as the low level of human development in the LDCs, they all say that addressing them in an integrated manner, in a holistic way, with the global support is key to really deal with these problems. So I believe that when we talk about this global support, that brings me to the issue of the role of the multilateral development banks. How can they really, in that respect, contribute to really bring about change and then deal with the vulnerability? I know that the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank are very active in all of these countries. But I would say that they are already engaged, they are already investing a lot in these countries. But I had a couple of suggestions in view of all these very huge challenges that they face. The first suggestion is that the fundamental problem that these countries face is the lack of capacity to really understand the nexus between the three and having a right policy framework. Therefore, having a support for them, providing a due support for them through these multilateral development banks for creating an integrated policy approach would be really a very important contribution to them. Because we all know that you have a huge knowledge, the knowledge in the development banks, because they have the biggest investors in these countries. And we hope that that will be taken as the number one issue of importance to them. Second, the best practices, of course, because they have been investing in many countries, the best practices would be very important for them. Of course, the policies could be really transplanted anywhere, but adapting that related to the situation on the ground would be really critical. The second issue is the financing programs and leveraging more resources to these countries. As I just explained, the financing gap is the biggest bag, whether we talk about water, whether you talk about energy, whether you talk about all the adaptation and other, the challenges in these countries. So the fourth one is the technology access. We have all heard that technology is key to deal with these challenges. But how to really make sure that they will have a technology access and the adaptation in order to modernize and leapfrog into the new sustainable development path? They all have expressed their commitment to do that, but how to really help them get that access and then adapt that to their, the problems that they face? That is another issue that we'd like. And finally, I would have said that institutional building and promoting multi-stakeholder approach is really a key issue for that. We have repeatedly heard from everyone. You have heard in the morning, you have heard during the day that there is a very strong national leadership and ownership. You have seen from all these countries, but we also heard that if there is no strong international support for them, they will not be able to do it by themselves. So it is important not only, I would say, from the moral and ethical perspective. I think we have heard again and again that it is important for peace and stability. It is important from the perspective of the self-interest of the global community. We believe that the poverty eradication, accelerated economic growth, and environmental sustainability are doable in these countries as well, and it is desirable. The large majority of the poor and downtrodden in these countries cannot and should not wait any longer, and it is our responsibility to ensure that there is a strong global partnership. That's why the conference that is taking place in Samoa is putting the genuine partnership as the number one objective for the conference, and same thing is coming from the other groups. So I do hope that when we talk about real support from them, we'll provide them as much as support in all the relevant areas in order to ensure that they have the capacity and they will take the necessary leadership in the countries in a multi-stakeholder manner with an integrated approach to all these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.